Today, I'm going to show you how to get a tight, clear, and aggressive bass tone like this. The secret? I stopped following the most common piece of advice for mixing bass. For years, I was told the same thing you probably were. To get a pro metal bass tone, you have to split your signal. You need a clean sub layer, a mid-range layer, and a grit layer. You process them all separately and then try to blend them back together. I spent countless hours on this, endlessly tweaking each individual track, trying to achieve the ultimate bass tone. But no matter how much I tweaked, it never felt like one cohesive instrument. It was more like a science project than mixing music. And look, a powerful bass is the foundation of a heavy mix. It's what glues the kick and guitars together. Without it, the whole track just falls apart. My super complex layered approach just wasn't working. It was a constant struggle for me. Then, I tried something different, something way simpler. I deleted all the layers. I went back to a single audio track and built a chain of plugins designed to work together, creating the perfect aggressive tone from start to finish. And honestly, the results were shockingly better. Here's my new philosophy. With a good DI recording and a carefully chosen chain of modern plugins, you can get the power of a layered low end and the aggressive clarity of a distorted top end all on one track. It's less complex and has way fewer phase problems. The goal here is a repeatable, copy and paste bass chain that gives you a pro-level aggressive metal tone, fast. So today, I'm going to walk you through that exact chain, plugin by plugin, and explain not just what I'm doing, but why I'm doing it. By the end, you'll be able to build this yourself. All right. Let's pull up the session and dive in. The key here is the order of operations. Each plugin just preps the signal for the next one. Before we even think about distortion, we have to control the raw performance. A bass guitar is incredibly dynamic. Some notes are hit hard, some are soft, and that inconsistency gets blown way out of proportion once we add heavy saturation. So the very first thing in my chain is a compressor, specifically the Waves CLA 76. I'm using the black model. I set the ratio to a pretty aggressive 8:1, with a medium attack and a fast release. I'm aiming for about 10 dB of gain reduction on the loudest notes. The goal here isn't character, it's pure utility. We're just taming the wild peaks and bringing up the quieter notes so the signal hitting our amp sim is super consistent. This is why compressing before the amp is so effective. It makes the distortion way more even and ensures every note has a solid presence. Here's how that sounds. Next up, this is where we get the core of our aggressive tone. For this, I'm using the Bogren Digital Trivium bass knob. This isn't just a random amp sim. It was designed by producer Jens Bogren and Trivium's bassist Paolo to deliver a bright, articulate bass tone that cuts right through a wall of guitars. I set the main gain knob to about 3.5. I'm not looking for a completely blown out fuzz, but a rich saturation that adds grit and brings the bass forward. This plugin is brilliant because it's built to create that mix-ready modern metal mid-range right out of the box, which saves a ton of EQ work later. It gives us the harmonics we need to hear the bass on smaller speakers without having to build a separate grit layer from scratch. Let's check it out. After the amp, we've got another CLA 76. You might be wondering, why another compressor? Well, the amp sim added its own compression and a whole new set of peaks. This second compressor is here to tame those. This time I'm using a gentler 4:1 ratio with the fastest possible attack and a fast release, aiming for about 5 dB of gain reduction. Its job is to catch any sharp peaks coming out of the amp and glue the tone together, making it feel more solid and controlled. Think of it as leveling things out after the distortion. Let's hear it in action. Now that our tone is shaped and the dynamics are under control, we need to set the final level and catch any last stray peaks. For this, a simple transparent limiter like the Waves L1 is perfect. The goal here isn't to slam it for loudness, it's a transparent ceiling. I set the output to prevent clipping and adjust the threshold so it's just barely kissing the loudest hits. This is also how I position the bass in the mix. As a rule of thumb, I like my bass to sit around 2 to 4 decibels below the rhythm guitars in perceived loudness, and the L1 gives me that final, precise control. Check it out. With the dynamics and saturation handled, now we can use EQ to surgically shape the tone. The amp sim got us 90% of the way there. This is just the final polish. I'm adding 2 main boosts. First, a broad 6 dB shelf starting around 800 Hz. This adds a ton of presence in the upper mids. Then I'm adding a more focused 6 dB bell curve around 1.5K. This is the magic frequency for that clank and pick attack. This combo helps the bass carve out its own space against the guitars and makes individual notes much clearer, especially in fast riffs. These are pretty common sweet spots for metal bass, but always listen in the context of your mix and tweak it if it sounds too harsh. Let me show you how it sounds. All that distortion and aggressive EQ can create some harsh, resonant frequencies, that nasty fizz that builds up and gets tiring to listen to. Instead of hunting for every single one with an EQ, I use Soothe 2. Soothe 2 is a dynamic resonance suppressor. I start with the electric guitar deharsh preset and apply it lightly. It intelligently listens for those harsh peaks and ducks them automatically, but without dulling the overall attack of the tone. Using it sparingly is key. We want to remove the painful harshness, not lobotomize our awesome tone. Here's how that sounds. Our final step is making sure the bass, kick drum, toms, and any bass drops can live together happily in the low end. They often fight for the same frequencies, which leads to a muddy, undefined bottom. For this, I use track spacer. I put it on the bass track and sidechain it to the kick, toms, and any bass drops. I set it to only react to frequencies below 400 Hz, with the amount knob set low, around 15%. Now, every time any of these elements hit, track spacer instantly carves out a small pocket in the bass for their transient to punch through. It's a dynamic EQ cut, which is way more transparent than traditional sidechain compression that ducks the whole bass signal. It makes sure the kick, toms, bass drops, and bass each get their moment, creating a tighter and clearer low-end foundation. Let me show you an example with the bass and drums going, and pay attention to the detail and punch of the kick when I turn track spacer on. So let's listen to this single track chain we just built in the context of the song. Hear how cohesive, powerful, and clear that is? The low end and the aggression feel like they're coming from one massive instrument. It just works. Now, am I saying multiband processing is always bad? Absolutely not. It's a powerful technique, but it's often overkill. The layered approach can still be a lifesaver if your DI recording has serious problems, like if the low strings are super boomy, but the high strings are thin and weak. Splitting them lets you treat those issues separately. It's also great for very specific sub-bass tricks, like if you only want to sidechain the sub-frequencies to the kick. But for a good, clean DI, I find the simpler chain gets better results faster. So there you have it. By focusing on a single, well-ordered plug-in chain, we made an aggressive, clear, and powerful bass tone that sits perfectly in a modern metal mix, without the headaches of layering. We control dynamics first, add a character with distortion, control dynamics again, and then polish the final tone with surgical tools. This is a repeatable system. You can copy this exact chain, tweak the settings for your own music, and get a killer starting point for your productions. Of course, this entire process starts with a great DI recording. If you're not sure how to get a clean, powerful, and consistent DI track, I've put together a free guide called Record Bass and Guitar DIs Like a Pro. It walks you through everything you need to know, and you can download it by using the link in the description. I hope this helps you simplify your workflow and get way better bass tones. If you found this useful, a like and a subscribe would be awesome. So I've got a question for you. Have you ever been frustrated with bass layering? Let me know your biggest struggle in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help out. Thanks for watching.